So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Unity.
First of all, how are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good. And
I've tried all the different approaches, doing miserably, being angry. I think doing well is like by far the best.
Smiling's good. It makes you feel better.
Mechanically,
healthier.
yeah, connects.
I agree with that philosophy. One of the things we say at Startup Health is mindset matters most.
This from a man named Unity.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you're back at it again. Zus Health. What's going on? Tell us about Zus.
Okay. Well, I had the chance to be an angel investor a bunch after getting fired. And I saw more than I could help. And all of these companies were such an interesting phenotype where they could provide care and write code in the same company. Whereas in my whole sort of career at Athena, there was two sort of tribes that would walk through the savannah but never overlap, as the providers and then the sort of software makers. And then once a year, the water would be poured into the hymns pan and they would all, cross each other for a while and occasionally get stompled and then go back to their corners. And work happened and technology was implemented and often at the tip of a gun or an $80 billion bonus. But this idea of companies combining the things and actually sort of growing their own food rather than hunting in the savannah for it got me going. The problem was there was a really long putt for each of these companies. We do nothing but early stage, alcohol abuse disorder, and we need an entire EMR to write one prescription, do some coaching, and monitor alcohol levels with a remote monitored, breathalyzer. What is one, right? Yeah. Another one, we only do, early stage, or we only do, irritable bowel, or we only do early pre-diabetes, whatever it is. And they all needed kind of a pretty full stack to be able to cut their own little workflow through it. And they could write software, but they were all going to do this really big write of software. And I was like, hey, what was that line from Princess Bride? Do you think they'll make it?
Right.
It'll take a miracle. Goodbye. Here's your angel money. Good luck. And I thought, couldn't some of these things be common? Could there be a Build-A-Bear studio where these companies could go and get the commodity stuff?
Platform.
Yeah. And what it's bumped into, so it was really first like, how can all these angel investments build their workflows quickly so that they can get to market, so that they can get their A round and their B round and, make it. And what it's sort of bumped into is, and by the way, none of them actually are trying to keep others from seeing data. Like it's a whole ecosystem of companies that are actually not trying to block the sharing, at least of basic medical record data, because they're all a piece of the kaleidoscope. They're all only interested in irritable bowel or whatever my examples were. And so the idea of being able to pull the other pieces in and share their piece was perfectly lovely, as opposed to something to be passive aggressively blocked. And so that's where we got the idea of why don't we also have a shared record? Why don't we actually try to use FHIR non-cynically and build a really high performance production real-time FHIR data store of everyone that everyone with permission can see.
Do you feel like there's something of this moment now about what you're doing that maybe couldn't have been done even a few years ago?
Faux show, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's too soon to say thank God for the pandemic. But,
hey, we're finally getting back together.
Here we all are, a few of us. The idea that everybody, I think McKinsey had the big study that came out like the month before the pandemic that said, according to our research, theoretically up to 18% of all care could be delivered virtually. And precisely 60 days later, 100% of all care was being delivered virtually by virtue of the pandemic. And many companies were able to raise money and build out model, and many patients and members were able to realize how much better it could be to be in continuous touch with an always-on service as opposed to lumbering in, taking a day off of work, taking your pants off and sitting on wax paper so you can talk to a doctor for 6 minutes. Sometimes you need to do that, but not all the time. And in fact...
And miss a day's pay?
Yeah, all of it, yeah. So, the edge compute, the always-on, super cheap edge to healthcare finally was able to get its quickening moment in these last 3 years. And I think it had been in PowerPoint industry speeches, trade shows. Every one of us have seen it a million times.
Right.
But it didn't turn into kinetic energy until everybody had to try it for a while. And then suddenly, boom, $40 billion follows. And these are really well capitalized companies that are just, not all of them, obviously, and many will die, most will die, but they're better, as a tribe compared to the old-fashioned way.
What else do you think has changed, both that's helpful, but also maybe that's not? What are your thoughts on where we really are? Demand
After all my self-help on being positive, you want me to think about unhelpful things?
Well, let's be positive.
All right. Well, in the positives, you also have law. Like, there's probably only one thing that's been bipartisan all the way from pre-Trump through Trump and into Biden, which is data use. Like, both parties, everybody's like, yes, more data use, for sure. TEFCA, for sure. Cures. I mean, Cures is much more interesting than TEFCA because the actual data being distributed is distributed in better packaging and a better signal rate. It's less kind of messy to use. And it's consumer mediated. People can actually say, I want my freaking data, and get it. Mm-hmm. And it's passed. It's not just passed, it's been through rulemaking. It's in one piece under enforcement. So law is better.
That's a game changer.
Practice, now HIPAA happens. It doesn't happen as a mainstream thing, but everybody shares CCDs all the time. There's almost no providers left in America that don't have a way to get to them, and they share the CCD. So the potential, it's crufty and crappy and slow, but it's there. And then finally, the rest of the world has been building platform tools really well and using them. And so we're used to the idea of building software and businesses with tools, with platform components. So we've had a free trial offer, and you throw in the free trial offer of telemedicine that we got thanks to COVID, and a lot of good tailwind right now.
I remember seeing you at an event, I don't know, similar size to this, maybe 15, 16 years ago, running around, paper, fax, fax machine, and
just filled out my MRI form.
Right.
Smoker? Nope, still no.
Right.
Thank you. Do you have any metal objects in your body? Nope, still no. So just the other day. It's great.
Things, I have this theory that in healthcare there's two types of innovation happening at the same time. There's this very incremental innovation on one path, and then there's another parallel path of leapfrog innovation. And it's not necessarily certain when that's going to take shape, but from 15, 20 years ago when you were running around with the paper to now, did you think we would have made more progress, or are we somehow, we've leapt forward in a way that maybe we haven't realized yet because the pieces are starting to come together because of the opportunity to create a platform?
In all things, we want to go around it, right? But we always have to go through it. It's like, I would like to skip adolescence. No, then you'll have a nervous breakdown and have an affair later on. And go through adolescence, break up with your parents, learn to like them as adults, whatever. Like, going through meaningful use. Like, what a, sad and wasteful effort in top-down nation building that caused products that didn't connect and didn't do practical, tactical things. Instead, were built entirely on the ability to win at government inspections and be shovel-ready in time for the checks. That was too bad. But anyway, everyone got on something. They're used to clicking now. Doctors what I hear a lot of doctors liking their Epic, liking it. Like, I love Epic. I had a survey with a company. A bunch of doctors broke up with their health system. Kind of, there's a lot of doctors peeling off now. The big roll up is now sort of the big roll out, and these doctors are joining digital health companies or standing up their own more tech forward versions of themselves. And one of the surveys, the doctor in the little focus group, the senior citizen, older man, said, well, my biggest problem is I do not want to lose, what's the name for the Epic portal?
Right.
He loved the Epic portal.
Yeah.
That's a whole evolution from where we started that, I'm not sure I would have ever expected to hear.
But do you think there's gonna be some leap
Everybody
forward?
wants moonshots. I mean, honestly.
You're busting on our moonshots? What's going on?
I went nuts with Biden. We're gonna do cancer moonshot. No, you're not.
No,
Joe.
it's now cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's.
Triple moon, 3 moons, 1 shot. No, doofus. Not the president. People in a bar arguing.
Incremental's good.
Incremental good. Doesn't mean you have to go slow, right? When you set up that contrast with incremental and rapid, I was worried that the bad guys would be the incremental guys. And
no,
I feel like the good guys are the
real
incremental
world.
guys,
It's
but you
the
have
real
to
world.
increment on some set of metric that isn't a top-down, government metric or corporate metric, but is indigenously valuable. Network effect, for example.
Yeah.
Are there 2 sides of the network? Are they using? Are they adopting? And then the product has a true north for evolution that is just more inspiring and more clearly directive of invention than something that is sort of political or bureaucratic in nature. Whenever you do a moonshot, you're accepting a massively bureaucratic, massively off base, and sometimes if it's to save democracy or to win a war or to, you don't mind being, to take on COVID. Like, think of the inefficiency at the COVID response, but hey, we responded.
Right.
Okay, inefficiency, no problemo. Like, we didn't lose 2 million people. So what a healthy ecosystem and what a healthy market, my biggest issue with healthcare, as you know, is that the demand curve doesn't work. When you lower your price, you don't gain market share. When you raise your price, you don't lose market share. And so everybody sort of stands there and is like, how about if we went up a little bit, I think what I think these companies hold out hope for me that we'll see more of is agile, product-centered development whose success is measured on results, on actual engagement in the network, actual joy by providers and patients.
So there's 2 general audiences here. There's builders and startups and people building, and then there's CIOs and people trying to figure out how to integrate some of these innovations or technologies into their legacy platform or company. What thoughts or wisdom or ideas do you have for both of those groups on how they should be thinking about the incremental opportunities of the next couple of years?
Yeah, this is the age-old question about disruptive innovation. What do you do? Try to put it in a box. And healthcare has been able to put disruptive innovation in a box because there's this government that has a huge amount of power and can be kind of convinced by elites who have a lot of access to, legislate in a way that blocks the little chirpies from nipping at too many heels. When that system is disrupted by a pandemic or some other crisis, you have regermination and the possibility for moving to more of a product-based, agile-based thing. In general, the advice for the really great visionary established are to set up a really self-sufficient, well-supported small group to blow up the mothership, right? CIO of a health system, build the best virtualization of our highly profitable in-person care that you can possibly build. And I'll take the heat, and you just go ahead and build it, and we'll figure out the business model, because there's value being created by that. But you guys just go ahead and do it. Go into Vive and Startup Health and buy everything, try everything, even if the Department of Cardiology wants to shoot you for using some bunch of dopes who invented an iPhone-based EKG machine that ruins your imaging revenue. Set it up, see if it'll work. And then, if it starts working and grabbing and growing, now figure out if you can figure out a business model. And then everybody else just hope that innovation doesn't happen and that you look forward leaning and do lots of compliance meetings and manage risk well, and that's fine. And that you need that. Like, you need stabilizing forces on the things that we actually use all the time. These kooky innovators should be kept at bay until they prove themselves and stabilize and and can take on fiduciary weight.
So you think that process is healthy? It's a good...
Critical. Yeah. I think in general, startup guys get overly lit up when they get a meeting with the big established guys. And I suggest to you that your time would be better spent with a, really marginal, lame, little established guy rather than a famous, big, powerful.
I think that is such
guy.
an important piece of wisdom.
Yeah. Athena grew entirely on clinics in second cities that no one paid attention to, that barely knew what a CIO was, and then when we went to our first, health system, we were, the patient database, was 10, 20 times the size of the health system. We didn't have a customer that big, but all the operations that were going on were bigger than that systems. Because we had picked off so many little guys in the long tail that were deciding between death and dishonor. So I don't know.
So
it's worth.
Leave us with some optimism.
Yeah.
And also maybe an ask for Zus.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of startups, both here and streaming, that may be relevant. I think part of making these platforms work is they need to get that critical mass. What's your ask, and then also what are you?
What's my ask, and what's my
optimistic
joyful thing? Okay. This is going to not sound optimistic at first, but I think this digital health movement probably won't work unless literally the speckled collection of people in this room or in this building make it work. It is one of those wonderful moments, black swan moments, where individual, we'll never be Zelensky, but we'll dream about when our Zelensky moment comes around, that we'll frickin' do it.
Yeah.
That we'll be ready, and something will have prepared us. I don't know what it is, a great marriage, extra money from his business, or what it was that gave him the wherewithal to just say no, principle over practical.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
And everyone said, you know what?
Yeah.
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 And all of us are now being led by this,
Yeah.
as well we should be. And each one of us in digital health, we're right around a hot spot where that kind of moment is possible. And so what's optimistic about it is there's a possibility for all of us to be part of this magical part of the human experience where you create something that absolutely wouldn't have been there without your effort.
Yeah.
That gets used and loved and appreciated and criticized and made better by others for years to come. That is the greatest feeling in the world. A child, right? It's a little lump and then it hates you, and then it goes on and it likes you, and it's just a fabulous thing, and we can do it at a social magnified level. And that is a reason for enormous optimism. And Zus my plug is let Zus be your water boy. We don't want to do digital health. We just want to carry the water and squirt it in really efficiently to your mouth. It's a database. It's a freaking, we do the least interesting pieces. We do registration, patient arrival. Does anybody here send out a form stack questionnaire to new members that causes them to lose interest and drop off or answer the question? Or do you have a mid-level guide who calls and tries to get the question answered? Zus does all these things, and it resides on a shared data store, so that if other people update, you can see the feed, and I think that'll help.
So I just want to thank you because
you've
come to you've met with our entrepreneurs pretty much every year since the inception of Startup Health, and it means a lot to have people like you support early stage innovators. I think we need to get all the ecosystem doing that. So I really appreciate that. Our entrepreneurs appreciate that. And thank you for being here.
Well, you're proof positive of the reason for optimism. I went to the Startup Health things because you were a startup. And I was like, this guy's starting up a startup for startups.
Right.
I gotta be there.
It is true.
And then it's not a startup anymore. It's an established, well-known name that people chitter-chatter about in their channels as a sign of accomplishment, as a credential. So
thank you.
Bravo for you, man.
Appreciate that.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you so much.